Hello, Pacers fans. Welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your go-to spot for all things Indiana Pacers. We've got a fun one today as we will be talking about some transactions that took place over the 4th of July weekend. Pacers looking forward to Summer League and the training camp that's taking place currently. Kevin Pritchard talked to the media today in Indianapolis around 1 p.m. Eastern time, and he had a lot to say on the acquired draft pick, Cam Jones. He talked about Jay Huff, the new Indiana Pacers that they got from the Memphis Grizzlies. James Wiseman is coming back on a 2-year deal with the Indiana Pacers, that second year being a team option. Isaiah Jackson deal signed, pretty much coming guaranteed is what it sounded like. It's just a matter of what they can do to complete that transaction. So it sounds like Ijax is headed back to the Indiana Pacers. My cat's excited about all the information and news that came out today. We got some clarification on what happened with Myles Turner. So, of course, we will be discussing that because Kevin Pritchard was very candid, as he usually is, with the media, and that's very good for us as Pacers fans. I always love listening to KP, Chad Buchanan's oftentimes on Setting the Pace, Ted Wu with Alex and Facci, and they always, and even on 1070 The Fan at times, Rick Carlisle talking about, it's just, I love the way that the front office and the coaching staff talk about the Pacers and what they will tell you. Obviously, they're not so transparent that it gives away their plans, but they are so open, so honest about everything that they are doing and thinking as far as like what direction they're going in the future. Obviously, not going to tell you players they're after or anything like that, but you can just tell based on the way that Kevin talked today and Chad's talked in the past, Rick's talked in the past, Ted, that they have a plan and they have different variations of plans and plans after plans. You can tell that it's very well thought out, that they look at everything from a bird's eye view and perspective, that they know that this is a business and it's treated oftentimes like a business, but also I think that Kevin, especially today, gave a really good view of, and the video is actually up on the Pacers YouTube channel. So if you want to go over and check out, it's a 30-minute video of Kevin Pritchard and his availability today after the Summer League training practice that the young Pacers are going through right now as they prepare for the week ahead, as they will head out to Vegas very shortly here to play in the Summer League, which is a lot more fun than it used to be. There's like a group stage, there's round robin, and then there's the bracket play, and you can win a title as the Summer League champion, which is a blast, I think, for the young players, and you get to see some really good talent. Really excited about looking at Johnny Furphy, looking for Enrique Freeman minutes. Ray J. Dennis is going to get some run there. Cam Jones, Talon Peter, and some of the undrafted free agents that the Pacers acquired. I'm looking forward to covering the Summer League, what that all looks like, who impresses, who doesn't, where do I think these guys fit. We will have complete Summer League coverage over on our social media platform, all platforms. We will talk about it. We will recap the games. We will discuss it on the podcast coming up this week. So we will do our best to recap every game or after every game or every other game, just depending on my schedule. But we should be able to get a lot of that done, and it's going to be a blast. Those games coming up, let's just talk about those now. The Summer League starts on Thursday, July 10th. They start over there in Vegas, 5 p.m. Eastern time on FanDuel and NBA TV against the Cleveland Cavaliers on July 10th at 5. On Saturday, July 12th, the Oklahoma City Thunder and Pacers will play in a NBA final rematch in the Summer League. That is again Saturday, July 12th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on FanDuel and NBA TV. Monday, July 14th at 6 p.m. Eastern time, they will play the Chicago Bulls on FanDuel and ESPNU. And then July 17th, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2 and FanDuel against the New York Knicks. It's a fun one because the Pacers play 3 of the 4 teams that they face in this year's playoffs in the Summer League. They do play the Bulls. I think it would have been a lot of fun. I don't know how the scheduling and stuff worked or why they didn't try this, because I felt like it was a missed opportunity. But I'm not even sure the NBA realized what they were doing. Maybe the OKC game. But the Pacers play those 3 teams. It would have been fun to play the Bucks in the summer league, because then you would have had the 4 teams that the Pacers played in this year's playoffs playing against them in the summer league, which would have been just kind of fun storyline, I think. But they don't. So we will play the Bulls instead. But that is the summer league coming up, and then they break into bracket play, and then a champion, I think, is then crowned a couple of days later. So exciting times coming for the young Pacers, some Pacer basketball to watch. I know we just got done watching some basketball, but we are ramping up into the summer league. And then after summer league, you'll hear of preseason camps starting to come together. You'll have players getting together for their own private. I know Siakam hosted it last year. Maybe you see some players come together in Indianapolis to train, or Orlando, where Pascal Siakam, I think, resides. So right here in my backyard. I'm in Orlando. So maybe they can come out here and, if Ty wants to do some of those pool exercise that Jason Tatum was doing in his pool, we can put Ty in our pool out here, and maybe he can do some exercise there, and then we can all go. No, I'm kidding. But it'll be fun to see how quickly this all ramps up again. And the Pacers are going to be back in business here soon, as summer league pretty much starts that off, and then it's quickly into preseason, and then you start to see the season right around the corner. So a quick turnaround for the Indiana Pacers, and they've done some things that have really ramped up the offseason over this last, 4 or 5 days. We're recording this on Monday night, so anything that happens on Monday night after this recording, I do apologize, but we got some great information from the early press conference that took place this afternoon. Let's get into it. Let's start with the Cam Jones finalization of that trade. So they get the draft rights to Cam Jones from the San Antonio Spurs, which was finalized on Sunday, and the 38th overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft was sent to Indiana in exchange for a 2030 second round pick, which is Sacramento's own pick, and the cash considerations, the very popular cash considerations sent the other way to San Antonio. Cam Jones will wear the number 7, which was donned by Jermaine O'Neal. That's fun. Malcolm Brogdon wore 7. George Hill wore 7 in his second stint with the Indiana Pacers as well. So this Buddy Hield. So a lot of 7s have been present in the Pacers organization. I think Jermaine, obviously, the most memorable, but Cam will wear number 7 for the Indiana Pacers when he starts training camp, summer league on Thursday. He was already in practice with the Pacers, was seen with Talon Peter. Actually, earlier than the trade was announced, he was seen downtown walking around with the second round pick, Talon Peter, or his fellow second round pick buddy, teammate, whatever you call him. Talon Peter was also seen in Indianapolis with Cam, and they were enjoying the city over the weekend. And they've started training camp now officially together, as Cam Jones was allowed into the facility on Sunday because they couldn't finalize that in the the moratorium didn't lift until Sunday, and then that's when everything happened, and all the news breaking today on Monday, which you see all the updates from, Shams tweeting all this stuff. You see all the updates on the official pages of like the Houston Rockets, the Bucks, tons of people made different moves. The Heat made move today with the Clippers. And so you see all the moves coming into play now. You see all the pieces going every which direction, and the offseason is officially upon us and pretty much over. All in the same breath, because I think due to the new CBA and the luxury tax and the aprons and stuff, it's mostly just trades now. The free agency has been, and the hype around free agency has been kind of knocked down because of the new CBA and the way that teams are trying to operate around the tax aprons. So all that stuff being announced, we will do kind of like a bird's eye view of what's happened in the NBA transactions and stuff as we get further into July. And then obviously we'll do a full NBA preview where we'll talk about teams with new players and all sorts of fun things. We'll do a couple of episodes that are NBA based so that we can catch up on what's going on around the league as the season approaches. Looking forward to that. We're going to get into the Pacers news that happened starting, I guess, early Monday morning, I guess, is when all this stuff started coming out as far as the Myles Turner information in the afternoon. And then we'll talk about Jay Huff, who was acquired from Memphis over the weekend, because I think that that is interesting to talk about on the heels of what happened with Myles Turner. And I think that's a good place to start. I think we should start our, I guess, transaction side of this podcast, segment of this podcast, with the news of Myles Turner. So those that haven't been paying attention or have been paying attention as first you're listening of this podcast or video or whatever you're doing to first reach out and engage with my content is the Myles Turner is headed to the Milwaukee Bucks as they announced that earlier this afternoon on Monday. The Pacers put out a nice video tribute for Myles Turner. The Bucks put out a photo of Myles in a Bucks uniform. It's a newer photo I hadn't seen yet, and I don't like it, but it's not fun. Myles Turner, 10 years with the Indiana Pacers. Tony East actually he tweeted a photo today that Turner's block signage had been removed from Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So as soon as that happened, it sounds like the front office contacted the facilities and they took that thing down quicker than anything that I've seen. No, but they took it down quick. And as Kevin Pritchard talked today, there was this should add some fuel, I guess, to the rivalry that is Bucks Pacers, which had been the best rivalry, I think, in the NBA leading up to this point, at least in this new iteration of all these players being on this team, and with Tyrese and Giannis and the whole ball issue thing that happened where the Pacers were just trying to get the ball. Sorry, coughing there. Pacers were trying to get a game ball. Giannis wanted the game ball because he had set a franchise record for scoring. And all things considered, it was not a pretty ending to that game. And then the playoff series over the last 2 years has just added more fuel to the flames. And it's a heated rivalry now. And now it's getting even more interesting because of Myles Turner, who signed a 4-year, $107 million deal to make the move possible. Damian Lillard is supposedly going to be waived. We haven't really heard much on that front. I didn't actually look before. I should have looked before jumping on the podcast, but I got home from work and then just jumped in. I think it's a really bad move for the Bucks in just the fact that they are stretching and waiving Damian Lillard's $113 million on his contract over the next 5 years. And over the next 5 years, that means about $25 million per year that they're going to stretch that to in order to waive him to make room for Myles Turner and some contract space for Turner. However, that being said, everybody that does like the cap breakdown and salary breakdown, they're basically saying that this is like paying Myles Turner $50 million a year because of what they're going to have to do to make room and space for Myles Turner. So even though it says 107 million for 4 years, it's a lot like $50 million because of what they have to do with Damian Lillard's contract. So an interesting move, one that I think really handcuffs the Bucks. And you saw the Bucks re-sign Ryan Rollins today, and they also re-signed Bobby Portis Jr. and then traded Pat Connaughton, and they let Brooke Lopez. It's a very weird. They re-signed KPJ earlier in the offseason. It's like it's just a mess. Whatever the Bucks are doing, and they're looking for veteran point guard help, but it doesn't sound like it's going to be available to them. They went after Chris Paul. It sounds like they didn't get him, and the Bucks really just a desperation shot, a desperation heave to keep Myles Turner. It's very interesting. I just the Buck situation is just an attempt to keep Giannis there as long as possible, but I'm just not sure Myles Turner is the one that's really going to convince him to stay there. And I think inevitably Giannis ends up leaving Milwaukee, and that becomes, I guess, Myles Turner's Milwaukee Bucks team. I don't know. It's very interesting. I'm very confused by the moves that Milwaukee made, but I guess good luck. And good luck to Myles Turner. Well, he will be missed. We really loved Myles, and it was a lot of fun. 10 years. He gave a lot to this community. Great with people, kids, fans, signed autographs, gave back to the community. Turner's Block. I mean, just a really great person, great human being. Love the human being that is Myles Turner. But again, you move on, I guess, and you do your best to move on. And the Pacers did that over the weekend and into today. There were a lot of things that happened that Kevin Pritchard said that this is the direction of where this team is headed, and we'll talk about it here. So I guess Myles Turner and the Pacers front office had been talking about an extension throughout the playoffs, and obviously probably before that, laying the groundwork, and then in the playoffs, it really started to intensify. Shams tweeting out that the Pacers and Myles Turner were really close to signing a deal and getting a deal done to extend Myles Turner's time in Indianapolis. Then the Tyrese Haliburton injury happens in game 7. Fast forward, Myles Turner, Pacers, big question mark. Do they bring back Turner? Do they go into the luxury tax? There are a lot of questions on if the Pacers were willing to go into the luxury tax because Myles Turner was not going to be playing on a team next year with Tyrese Haliburton, no matter what happened because of Ty's injury. So they were wondering, do you bring back Myles Turner? Do you go into luxury tax in the year that Tyrese is not with the team? And a lot of conflicting reports. I know there were reports out there that the Pacers were starting to question whether they wanted to do it. And then there was reports that the Pacers had decided they didn't want to go into the luxury tax with Myles Turner. And then interestingly enough, today, Kevin Pritchard able to talk to the media for the first time. And during his media availability, he said that Myles Turner and uh, Myles Turner's agent and himself, Kevin Pritchard, were discussing the contract and trying to get the deal done. And Kevin Pritchard had a number, and he put that number out there. And he said, as always with negotiations, you put that first number out there. The agent comes back with a counter, and then you work from there on how to come to an agreement in a negotiation. He said that he extended that number and didn't hear back from Myles Turner's agent. And then all of a sudden, they're reading, I think a couple days later, that Shams had uh, had tweeted and gotten a source to say that Myles Turner was accepting an offer from the Milwaukee Bucks. And when asked about it, Kevin Pritchard said that he never received word back from Myles' agent before they accepted that deal. He didn't know about the deal. He had no idea that the Bucks were even an option. He said that in his in the conference room, they've got a system where they talk about teams that are in the cap space to add people, so they're very aware of other teams' cap situations. He said the Bucks weren't even an option at all, and was floored, just like the rest of the NBA, of the moves that the Bucks were willing to make. And he said that I don't necessarily agree with the moves that the Bucks made to be able to do that, but to kudos to them for being able to do it and gutsy enough to do it, and that he loves Myles to death, that he hopes that they're friends later on in life. Is, he said that emotions are raw right now with Myles Turner, and also with the front office staff. They feel like they didn't really get a fair shake on the Myles Turner negotiation side of things. So there are some raw emotions, and obviously there's not been discussion since he's made that decision. Myles will go to Milwaukee. They'll introduce him as a Buck. He'll probably open up about his side of the story. I'm sure it goes along the lines of that he didn't get the offer that he felt he deserved from Indiana, and given his blood, sweat, and tears for where he expected more money in his contract, and probably felt slighted. And for a guy that's been in trade rumors, for a guy that's, the Pacers have signed DeAndre Ayton to an offer sheet, and we're basically telling Myles without telling him that he's probably no longer on the team. And then it just, a lot of things happened, right? But then you also have the aspects of, like, the Pacers decided to choose Myles Turner over Domantas Sabonis, and I'm sure Sabonis was more of an option for the Kings than Turner was at that point of that trade. But it seems like there was a lot of that throughout the tenure of Myles Turner in Indianapolis, and that comes to an end now. I mean, that's over. There, the back and forth game of, is he staying, is he going, is he going to be traded, kind of thing. The Pacers we'll no longer worry about that because he's no longer part of this team, and I don't think he will ever be part of this team again. Uh, it's fascinating. It really is. It a weird way for this to end. Um, the people that are saying the Pacers got caught with their pants down, I just don't buy that. I mean, you were worried about one team, honestly, unless the Lakers were able to find some kind of way to kind of wiggle out of some money. I felt like Brooklyn was really the only option, and then you had maybe a chance where you shake some things loose, and the Lakers could have gotten him on some kind of deal, maybe a sign and trade kind of thing. But now Turner walks without, and that's what Kevin Pritchard said. He goes, in a market like us, a market like the Pacers, you really hate to just lose a guy that just walks away that you could get some value out of, because that doesn't come along very often. And unfortunately, because of the way Miles did things, um, and rightfully so, it's his right to be able to do whatever he wants, take more money for his family, but it did leave the Pacers high and dry. And usually you like to get value out of a player like that. Well, they don't. And now the Pacers are kind of up the creek without a paddle, you could say, but not in the way that I think the way that Kevin Pritchard talked about it, it was like, these things happen. I don't feel any kind of ill will towards Miles because he's such a great human being and he did what was right for his family. And he goes, I don't blame him for taking more money. But he also, alluded to the fact that the feelings were probably not good on both sides after that happened, after the decision was made, because of the way things ended. So not a good ending. Um, he did say though that KP said that things have ended, and I'm assuming he was talking about Paul George, maybe Victor Oladipo as well. He talked about situations ending in Indiana not so well during his tenure, and Paul George was at the end of his tenure, or sorry, at the beginning of his tenure, KP, and then also you got Victor Oladipo and how that ended, and how some of these coaching hires have ended in Kevin Pritchard's time. But ultimately, he said that Myles Turner, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like this guy gave everything he could give you for 10 years, a decade of basketball in his life. And so there's a lot of respect there. Whereas I think because Paul George did it so quickly in his time, left, and there was a little bit more of like he turned his back on the city. Well, Miles went after more money. It just so happens to be with the Milwaukee Bucks. And so we will see Miles 4 times a year, maybe more. We oftentimes see the Bucks more than I'd like to, but we will see them quite a bit coming up in the future. And Miles will be there, and it'll be. I'm sure he'll get a nice round of applause and I'm sure a little bit of boost to start. But then as that game goes on, it will quickly probably turn into booze more than it is anything else. And, that's part of sports. It's part of life. And, Miles, I think is a great person. I'd never boo him, but I know some people will, and that'll be that. But again, I respect Miles Turner. I'm so happy for what he's done with the city and the team. And he leaves, in my view, he leaves in a pretty good light. Obviously picking the Bucks, that kind of hurts, but uh, what can you do? Bucks came out of nowhere and pretty much jeopardized their future just to land Myles Turner. So there is that aspect of it. Shifting gears, Jay Huff was acquired by the Indiana Pacers this weekend. The Pacers acquire Huff from the Grizzlies in exchange for a second round draft pick, according to Shams Charania of ESPN. The teams are also performing a second round pick swap as part of the deal. Huff joins a center rotation that is still somewhat taking place. Tony Bradley had his $2.94 million team option picked up, but he could be moved or waived. That is non-guaranteed money. Backup Isaiah Jackson received a qualifying offer worth approximately $6.4 million, which makes him a restricted free agent. And from everything Kevin Pritchard was saying about Ijax today, and he said that he had a center on the roster that he believed they were going to get a deal done with. Tony East asked him, would that be Isaiah Jackson? He said, that's a good guess. Obviously, it's the only player because they signed James Wiseman, and that was announced today. Kevin Pritchard came out and straight up said they would be signing James Wiseman. They're going to sign him for 2 years, the second year being a team option, just like his contract last time. He's got incentives and bonuses in there built in to where if he performs well, plays enough games, that he could reach that bonus, make some extra cash, but they won't break the bank in order to sign James Wiseman. So that is very exciting. James coming back from that torn Achilles. So that's exciting because he's looked really good in his games where he was playing underneath the Pacers coaching staff. That gave him a lot of confidence. I think heading in the preseason last year, he was one of the biggest surprise coming out of the preseason. Played extremely well. Starts out that game in Detroit really well. 6 points, 1 board, 2 of 4, I think, from the field. Looked like a guy that was going to be an absolute force, and maybe the Pacers had finally turned around the guy that so many had tried, and it was going to pay off big time. And then he goes down with the Achilles injury about 4.5 minutes in. And then Isaiah Jackson steps up and back into that second spot. I think that they were putting James over Isaiah. Isaiah Jackson comes in and then he tears his Achilles 5 games into the season. Ijax was averaging 7 points per game, 60% from the field. He averaged 5.6 rebounds per game in that 5-game stretch, but goes down with an Achilles injury, and they lose both James and Isaiah for the season, both of them rehabbing with the Pacers. James Wiseman was actually traded at the deadline to make room for some money so they could go out and get a backup center. They then bring him back in non-official, and they let him work out in the Pacers facility. He looks great. I guess he texted or was talking to Rick and said he 360 dunked it. And Rick said that he was really progressing nicely, and they love James and his attitude. So they're bringing James Wiseman back as a center option. Isaiah Jackson sounds like he's all but confirmed to come back. So they're just finalizing some details with him. And then Jay Huff landed from the Grizzlies. So now you've got 3 centers coming in to join Tony Bradley, and that's now going to bring them to 4. I don't think obviously they would have 4 to start the season. I think with the injuries, they'll keep them around as long as possible. But I think at some point, if James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson stay healthy, I could totally see them waiving Tony Bradley. And if Tony doesn't land somewhere, I think they could kind of keep him around the team in case something happens. Thomas Bryant sounds like he's going to be the odd man out. I would assume Thomas is going to get a little bit of a bigger payday just because of how well he played with Indiana during the regular season and during the postseason. And I think they're banking on that. But I wouldn't be shocked if Thomas is a free agent and the Pacers approach him at some point should anything happen. But it does sound like for now, it's going to be Huff, Wiseman, and Jackson, even though Tony Bradley, his option was picked up. I feel like James Wiseman is kind of what Tony Bradley is. So if James stays healthy, then there's not really much need for Tony. So we will see what happens with those guys, but it sounds like the Pacers are going to keep their options very open for that center position and go pretty much center by committee until they can figure out if Isaiah Jackson is going to take that next step to become maybe a starting center. Can Jay Huff become that starting center? And speaking of, let's talk about him because he's the one that we're very unfamiliar with. Pacers announced Sunday that the team acquired Jay Huff from the Memphis Grizzlies, again, in exchange for the 2029 second-round pick, Portland Zone, and the right to swap second-round picks in the 2031 NBA Draft. Huff, 26, achieved a minor breakthrough with the Grizzlies in 24-25, playing a career-high 64 games. He averaged 6.9 points per game. He turns 27 in August, landed his first NBA contract in his 4th season in the league after making a strong early impression in Memphis. The stretch 5 averaged just under 7 points while shooting 40% from 3 on 3.1 attempts in 11.7 minutes per game with the Grizzlies last season. Huff was one of just 3 7-footers to shoot 40% on 3-pointers while taking at least 200 attempts, along with Karl Anthony Towns and Kristaps Porzingis. He also ranked 24th in field goal percentage allowed on layups and dunks last season among 90 players to contest at least 300 shots per Genius IQ. So he's a good shot blocker, rim protector. Got great length, 7 foot, and challenges a lot of great shots. Bigger wingspan. I think he's bigger than Myles Turner, and not physically. Physically, they're they're roughly the same build. He does struggle some rebounding the basketball, but that's not surprising as far as just the fact that Myles Turner also struggled. And I think with stretch bigs, it's difficult, right? Because a lot of their game is shot blocking, so they're going after blocks, and that takes you out of key rebounding position at times. I think being a stretch big, you're not under there to get offensive rebounding. So the rebound thing has always really confused me when people said Miles, like, yes, he wasn't great rebounding the basketball like a traditional big would be, but he doesn't play like a traditional big. Like Myles Turner didn't really play as a traditional big except block shots. I think you're going to get that same kind of thing with Jay Huff. I think that he's a little bit better as far as athleticism and being able to grab some boards. I think he's going to be a little bit of an increase and a bigger impact rebounding basketball than Miles, but not anything crazy. Last season, again, Huff was a guy that you could rely on heavily to knock down three pointers. Shooting 40% from three is an absolute asset to have. And I guess that's very similar to what Aaron Nesmith can do. I mean, that's a similar shooting stretch that Nesmith went on where he was shooting close to 40% and Huff can shoot 40%. Like that's how good of a shooter that Jay Huff has been. Previously bounced around with the Lakers, Wizards, and the Nuggets from 22 to 24. He was on the Virginia 2019 national championship team. He also won all ACC honors with Virginia in 2021. Cheap contract. Entering his 27th year, he's on $2,349,578. So a very affordable contract. And honestly, if you waive Tony Bradley, it's a like for like pretty much with his contract. It's actually less than Tony Bradley's making. So they really like this. Obviously, a much cheaper option than Myles Turner is going to be about $21-22 million cheaper. And I know a lot of people will have a lot to say about that. Well, the Pacers are cutting corners, they're going cheap. Something that was brought up during that press conference with Kevin Pritchard that I forgot to mention with the Myles Turner stuff was Kevin Pritchard came out and said directly that the Rails and Simon family were very willing to go into the luxury tax and deep into the luxury tax, like really deep, not real close to the second apron, but I mean into like the second portion of that first apron. And it I mean, from everything that was reported, that sounded right. And I think maybe, we may never know. Maybe there's some truth to Myles Turner, coming out and saying, well, if he does come out and say that they didn't offer him that great of a contract, who knows, right? You'll never actually know. But I trust KP, I trust Chad, I trust Ted, and they've always been true to what they say and honest about what they say. I think that number was exactly what Myles probably deserved. And Myles thought it was supposed to be more. And so that's why he moves on. But I feel like they went in with a reasonable deal. They could have made it a little bit more reasonable because that's how you negotiate. The agent didn't counter, so they just took off and left the Pacers at the negotiation table and never heard from them again. I just feel they were smart with what they were doing. Honestly, I prefer they don't go into the luxury without Tyrese because I do feel like they will build a better team when Tyrese returns, and they will be able to do so, and even more so because of the money. I think we won't know that obviously until Tyrese comes back. So I think you can't pass judgment until you see what the Pacers actually do with this money. I am convinced that they were very willing to go into that tax and pay that money. And now it seems to be a little bit delayed, but I still believe that they will use that money and make this team even better when Tyrese comes back. So uh, I don't know. I'm not quick to judge on what the Pacers doing. And Jay Huff is the most Pacer trade I think you could ever find. I mean, this guy is someone that I feel like has been passed up by many teams that offer a potential upside to where it's comparable to what Miles was able to provide for this team. I wouldn't put it by Jay Huff to become a very serviceable big man in this league and one that is a great role player. I think you could see a world where we're having conversations about, man, do you remember when they traded for Jay Huff and he became a solid role player, much like Aaron Nesmith, much like TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin, right? Guys that have been doubted that had been on other teams that you go out and make moves for. And then you've got those second round picks that the Pacers have really nailed, and Andrew Nemhard, right? And Johnny Furphy sounds like they've nailed. As he gets older, what does he become? And so I do. I believe in what the Pacers development coaches and stuff like that look like. The Pacers have an ability to get the best out of players that have been doubted. They have an ability to identify talent, and their data analytics are great. Rick Carlisle's even talked that the data and analytics team have just been extraordinary since he's arrived back in Indianapolis and identifying great talent, and they haven't really missed at all, like at all, and actually have found some great players. And you'll see that on display this year as more of them get opportunities. So I'm excited about Jay Huff. I obviously don't want to oversell him, but I do, because of what they've done in the past. Like, this has me very intrigued, this Jay Huff signing and what the Pacers have done. So that's fun as a fan when you've got a front office like the Pacers have, that they have you talking about moves like this because you truly believe that they can identify diamonds in the rough. And I think they might have done it again with Jay Huff after reading some of this stuff and watching what he did with Memphis in the very short time that he was with them last year, as far as minutes played. So, and many people will ask, why isn't he playing a lot? Jaren Jackson Jr. is there. Zach Edey is there. So you're not really going to get minutes there. In LA, competing for a title on LeBron's team, good luck getting minutes there. With Washington, such a bad run for that organization for a very long time. So it's tough to get there. And Alexander Sarr is there. So it's, they're building, they're tanking. They're not really interested in finding, right? So he's bounced around to places that don't really fit his style. I think this is a perfect fit. If you go and watch him play, ghost screening is his thing, picking and popping, rolling out to the 3-point line, stretching the floor, blocking shots. I mean, it really is. It's like you found the same prototype that was Myles Turner now in Jay Huff. And I think it will be very fascinating to see what Rick can do with a player like this. And a Virginia guy, Rick Carlisle and Jenny Busick, both graduated from Virginia, played in Virginia. And so there's those connections. And I don't know, I'm excited. It's a weird move, but I think a move we could be looking back at and going, man, what a find that was. So I'm excited to see what this team can do. And in the summer league coming up, like what Cam Jones can do, what can Talon Peter do, Furphy, Enrique Freeman, like those are guys that we've drafted in the last couple of years that could make an impact this season because of Ty's injury. And moving forward, what does the future look like? And then getting into the season, you're going to get to finally see and take stock of what Andrew Nembhard looks like as a point guard, because that's what Kevin Pritchard said, that it's pretty much this team that we're running it back with obvious filling in for the center position and point guard position. But it doesn't sound like it's coming from an external help. It's going to be more of the young guys getting chances. So we're going to get to see Andrew Nembhard, maybe some, if they go and get Quentin Jackson, if they get, the younger guys to return, Enrique Freeman, like what does he look like? They're going to get some run, and you're going to get to find out what you've got, take stock. And then Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker will be the talk of town once the season starts, because this is their year. I do feel like if this year doesn't pan out, both Jarris and Ben could find their way elsewhere. I wouldn't be shocked. I think Jarris gets a little bit more run just because I think he's younger than Ben. So, and Ben, you have to offer him a contract this year anyway, an extension, because next year he's not under contract. He's off his rookie. And they'll have to extend him, and what does that look like? He's one that I identified early on that even without Myles Turner signed, he'd be the hard one to keep. So I don't know. Do the Pacers throw the money there? Do they extend Aaron Nesmith, who is extension eligible soon? So a lot of decisions still to make for the Pacers. We will talk about a lot of that. We'll do an episode where we talk about the decisions that the Pacers are going to have to make. There's a lot of them coming, but I think a lot of that you won't know until February. Like I do believe they'll be figuring out things up until this trade deadline. And then I think at this trade deadline you start to see some pieces moved. Whether that be pieces moved in a trade or pieces moved in the fact that like we're moving money to this player or signing this player. I think that's what you see. I don't always mean trade, but we shall see. Again, I'm fascinated by the Pacers' move for Jay Huff. Really liked his game in Virginia. Saw some of those games I remember. Didn't really watch him in the NBA. I don't think I watched a single highlight or even a highlight of him until the Pacers got him. But exciting times, I think, even though it kind of feels weird without Tyrese, and obviously devastating off of that NBA Finals run and not having the chance to see what happened in Game 7 because of the injury. But I'm starting to get some excitement back, right, to see what this Pacer team can do. I'm convinced that we will come out of this better than we thought because of the things that could happen. I think you could see Huff turn into a productive role player. I think you'll see the best season that we've seen from Obi Toppin. I think you'll see Andrew Nembhard take another step. Could he become an all-star? Maybe. I think he does have that drive and that ability. Could you see Benedict Mathurin become what they finally thought he would? I think so. Jarris Walker, same thing. Serviceable role player or challenge to see if he could get into some conversation of maybe being a starter at some point down the road. A lot of things to be looking forward to if you're a Pacers fan. I do think that this team will be competitive. It's hard to tell because we've got to let the dust settle. We've got to see. Honestly, it's hard to pinpoint where this will fall because we've not seen this version of the Pacers. Right? I know a lot of people will point to like when Tyrese Haliburton was out that the Pacers were bad, like really bad without Tyrese. But I think this offense and this system will look a lot different with Andrew Nembhard at the helm. And I think Rick knows that, and they'll have to change it some to fit better into what Andrew Nembhard's strengths are. So I think this team will look a lot different. It's just hard to tell what their offense looks like next year without Myles and Tyrese. There's just so many unknowns about how they'll look on the floor because I think they'll still want to play with pace, but not all the time. Like, I don't know. I think we'll see more half court game from the Pacers than normal. But they'll figure it out, and Rick's really good at figuring things out like this, and I think that this team will look similar but very different in different ways. So that's exciting as well, and I just feel like we can't predict, and with a very strong Western Conference and a very weak Eastern Conference, I think we can take advantage of running through an Eastern Conference that, maybe we wouldn't have the same kind of success. We'd probably not even be a playoff team in the West. Whereas I think in the Eastern Conference, I wouldn't be shocked if this was a 5, 6, 7th, 8th seed. Wouldn't be shocked if it's a 9, 10, 11. Like it's so hard to place this team right now because we've just not seen it. So we don't know. A lot of questions coming up that will be answered. And when we start to figure those out, I think that it'll be very exciting about the things that we're figuring out. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you've gotten this far into the episode, we really appreciate it. If you could go ahead and give us 5 stars over on Apple or Spotify or wherever you find your podcast, if you can rate that, that'd be great. Leave some comments. What are your thoughts on the trade for Jay Huff, signing of James Wiseman, the seems like inevitable signing or re-signing of Isaiah Jackson? What do the Pacers do as as the guard situation has kind of thinned out? Would you like to see get some run? Who are some players that you think could emerge? What do you want to see from the upcoming season? What do you think they do with the offense? How different does it look? Let me know in the comments over on YouTube. Like, subscribe, share the video there too. It helps people find us. Again, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We will be back to talk about Summer League. Uh, we will not preview Summer League unless something crazy happens, but we will talk after game one, where we will have watched Cam Jones and Talon Peter and the undrafted free agents and Enrique Freeman and Furphy and Ray J. Dennis. I'm excited. It'll be a lot of fun to watch the young guys. So we will be back to recap what we have observed and what we thought of the young players of the Indiana Pacers are looking forward to adding possibly to their roster and rotation. So we will see you next time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.